Hi, it's Xanthe. I want to talk about some topics floating around my head, mainly to do with this whole trend with neurodivergence and autistic and ADHD and all that. I have spoken about this kind of thing before. I'll try and give some specifics that are kind of in my head while I think of it. I've got my sheets back on the line. The neighbour was water blasting his deck. Well, in New Zealand, a deck is the wooden bit sticking out from your house that you stick your barbecue on or whatever. It's not like some people with different accents might hear something different with the D-I-C-K. Anyway, it's D-E-C-K. But I cracked up laughing when someone actually did think it was that. I completely did not realise it until later, but anyway, I try my best. I do tend to sometimes talk quite fast. It's a combination of Kiwis do often talk quite fast, plus it can go really fast with the pressure of speech with bipolar disorder. So anyway, I try my best, and it's quite hard for me also to get my words out, fluently, as a sort of end up doing better with writing really, and more of a visual person, so my art, etc. And also I had selective mutism in childhood, even starting school. It wasn't a selecting to be mute, it was it's considered more of a sort of under a social anxiety type thing. I have talked in length about my diagnoses. I'll just do a quick rehash. So my primary diagnoses are bipolar disorder type 1, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Still affected by them, even though they're treated best they can, still have an impairment of what's called a mental injury. Other diagnoses which I think impact me, these pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, aka autism spectrum features. Sort of not masked, and that's what I kind of want to talk about. I've also got social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. I have major depressive disorder, but the kind of anxiety and depression can kind of be folded into the primary diagnoses of bipolar disorder and PTSD, because the whole purpose of the diagnosis in the first place is to look at what kind of treatments and supports. So I don't have capacity to work full-time, or even in what I trained in originally, which was science and teaching. I didn't last very long as a teacher at all. It was way too stressful, and so I just keep having these great big mood crashes, and they call it decompensations, which is basically major breakdowns, and just basically having a lot of struggles. And so I do a relatively low stress part-time job. I do my hobbies like my art and stuff like that. I live off an extremely low income, and I have tried to communicate some of what it's like. I also and Dare to Speak Out, which has gotten a great deal of pushback and even bullying, mob bullying, for criticising the neurodiversity movement, about how cult-like it is. I finally see some other people actually making the same sort of observations, and just the whole trivialisation of disabilities, just strip impairment, or they want to say impairment, but they say it's society only. No, the impairment is there no matter what society's doing or the environment. So they're completely confusing the whole issue with the medical model versus the social model and all of this, and just making up shit as they go along. And basically I've been observing this for at least probably nearly 20 odd years, just the changes that have happened. And my son was diagnosed with Asperger's before the DSM-5 came in Australia. New Zealand uses both the DSM-4 and the DSM-5, either or. And So I saw recently someone with a child with what would be classic autism's presentation, trying to advocate for the use of a profound autism, so it would be like autism spectrum disorder 3, level 3, very high support needs. Someone was saying, that child is not autistic. So this is where we've gotten to. We've gotten to this watered down version, which, looking at you, Tony Edward, now identifies as autistic after decades researching it, specialising in Asperger's, which he did not recognise in his son for 30 years. Like his son got into trouble with the law and all sorts of things. So then he thought, oh, maybe it's Asperger's. So then his son's autistic. Then watering it down further, and with Tony Atwood, so he's supposed to be like a world expert. So he's British, I believe, but based in Australia. When I was in Australia, I heard of him because he was considered to be the expert. Heard of him before my son was diagnosed. Now, it's like, I reckon it's just throwing his credibility out the window. Same with his colleague, Michelle, I forget her last name, if it's Garnett or Garrett, something like that. Another clinical psychologist, the two of them, they both admit they don't have disability or impairment from it, but they're going to identify as autistic anyway. It's just absolute joke. It's ridiculous. And so then off the end is making all of their content now about the neurodiversity movement version, which is traits, which can apply to pretty much everyone. And now menopause is getting called autism. Burnout has been called autism for ages, so then they use autistic burnout. Well, you know what the latest is, and I want to try and touch on this today. Autistic regression. Now, I'm seeing a couple of women who had careers and all this crap and got burnt out along the way, like anyone would, working, up and do with being a parent or whatever. They come across stuff online, go and seek out a neuroaffirming assessor. This is the other thing, the clinicians, if they're just being really sloppy and giving everyone a diagnosis when they don't have an actual impairment to meet criteria for a disorder, it's just ridiculous. But anyway, they are evangelising about autistic regression. Now, regression and autism was referring to the children who, the classic presentation, who would probably around the age of 2 or so, they would stop speaking, and this carries on into the adulthood usually, and the social thing. And so that was what autism was originally based on. And what's happened is it's just expanded, and they've added this high masking to the point where you can mask as neurotypical, exact quote, and without realising it, exact quote. And women mask, well anyway, so someone bleating on about this autistic regression said that a whole list of stuff what supposedly was, which I'll try and cover if I can remember it, but basically I said, well, I didn't mask, and I didn't go into details, but I didn't mask lots of things, including not going out to play with the other children at school, and not speaking and stuff like that. So the PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, is for people that don't fit exactly the autistic disorder, which was the classic Kenner's version, or the Asperger's version, which has no speech delay, but otherwise has certain things. It's supposed to be based on social communication and repetitive behaviours. My repetitive behaviours are not impairing. So therefore I don't meet criteria, but also I don't meet criteria for Asperger's anyway, because I did have some differences with my language development. But it's not really just differences, it was actually something really obvious. It was noted back in the 70s. So even though there wasn't a label for it, a diagnostic label, it was still noted by teachers and other people. get dropped off by to be babysat, and I just sit there in the chair for 2 hours and not interact, things like that. So you could also conceptualise it as social anxiety disorder. But anyway, I was just saying about this, and my mum said it was from a very young age, even before childhood trauma. So I don't remember a lot of it, so my parents had to say so. But you know what, about this autistic regression, let's list off what this person's making up, or some of them are making up. Apparently it's suddenly becoming very dependent. Well, I could say that that happened to me, but it was basically trauma and severe mental illness is what happened when I could not do some things for myself for an extended period of time, like drive, etc. But anyway, this list, but they're putting into autism. They're claiming now they've got autism and ADHD diagnosis is late, after decades of not noticing anything, after working in a job where earned them 6 figures. I've never earned 6 figures. But anyway, they suddenly regress. They forgot how to cook. They forgot how to drive. They had to rely on their partner. They therefore had to order takeaways because even though it was more expensive, because they couldn't cook, they didn't have the energy. They're describing very the burnout state. It's not necessarily autism, and this whole thing that they're saying that it's misunderstood in adults and that women mask. But then you see all these men saying that they mask, that no one noticed a damn thing when they were children. And one of these men, which really gets on my nerves, I really get on his nerves too because I called him out. He said he wouldn't have been diagnosed in childhood anyway because there was nothing to know. And what he consistently describes is his career burnout, which he also puts to the birth of his child, which and he must have masked without noticing it, because how can there be this big discrepancy? And he called it latent autism. So there's a late onset bullshit story about it. But you know what? It just really pisses me off that these people go around and spread the narrative. It comes from a book they always go back to by someone called Devin Price, who wrote this book called Unmasking Autism or something like that. And Devin Price actually has a blog post floating around somewhere saying, when I was borderline, about met the criteria for borderline. So it's just confusing the frickin' issue. And it seems to me that the modern version of autism is basically a personality disorder or anything else that's more stigmatised, but they want to shove it under autistic because then suddenly they're all celebrated. Welcome to the club, here's a cake. And I'm not joking, this is the kind of crap. It is just absolutely ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, just see if I can finish that list. So the regression, if I can remember. So I'm going to block this person now because they were getting really defensive because I commented, and then they were going, how dare you invalidate me? So that's always what they like to say as well. They were desperate for validation from strangers. When I say that my experience, I didn't mask, they say, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. How dare you make this about you? And I said, well, you wrote in your post, do you relate? I'm saying I don't relate, so therefore confirmation bias, they want the confirmation bias, they only want the ones that tell them the same thing. They think they're helping someone else when they are still in the middle of whatever their problems are, which are referred to substance abuse and all sorts of other issues. And then when I scroll through just out of interest, there was mention of there's obviously some unresolved grief, I think, because of the mother dying when they were a child. So, there's a lot of complex issues going on. I'm not saying the person doesn't have issues at all, but they've got to always put it to, oh, this is autistic, this is ADHD. I'll tell you another ADHD one I saw was someone leg jiggling, and they said it's an ADHD thing. Well, I've been a leg jiggler. It's the first time I became aware of it was when I was at school, and the teacher said, stop, there's an earthquake. It was just me jiggling my leg, and then when I stopped she says, oh, it stopped. Otherwise I wasn't aware that I do it. It's just just getting rid of energy, but it's a subconscious thing. What I'm seeing now is this unmasking ADHD, so they mesh together autism and ADHD. Oh, I'm just rambling. What's the top of my head, by the way? Just a whole bunch of things. But anyway, they meshed those together, but there's no way that they want to have the autism with the intellectual disability. They're trying to separate that. They don't want profound autism. Someone said, oh, this is just SB supremacy over again. There was a reference a while back with Asperger's. Everyone wanted the, oh, let's be the brainy geek in the Silicon Valley or whatever, but let's not be the one that, you know, the autism version. Let's just pretend it doesn't exist. The one that needs the 24 hours 7 so 24/7 care, that you're dealing with you know, safety issues like aggression against oneself and others, and doesn't have in many cases basic you know, self-care skills like taking oneself to the toilet, stuff, you know, very high level of impairment, disability with impairment. I don't even like to use the words saying I am disabled anymore, because that is by activists. They're saying disability has no impairment. So, you know, they're stripping the impairment from it. So I actually defend the use of impairment, because you've got to think about what the diagnosis is for. It's not wearing it as a trendy identity. It's not for a trendy brand. That's what it's become over the years. It's become just marketing, and then all these ADHD coaches are popping everywhere. They would not have the expertise to deal with someone with trauma, for example. Bipolar disorder and ADHD can look very, very similar. So anyway, what I was trying to say about this, just some more things off the top of my head while I think of it. Just got some other topics as an aside which I could talk about. Oh yeah, and there's people saying that they choose not to get a diagnosis because they don't want it to be used against them. Well, aren't they lucky that they can hide it so well that there's nothing to notice? That they can have the choice of whether they can function perfectly normal in society. And normal is just, when they like to say, oh, normal is just the majority, but statistically normal is just in a standard deviation curve, you know, the normal curve. It's just the one centred around the middle. So when people are now saying that they're all identifying as neurodivergent, that makes it normal. So anything related to this particular topic off the top of my head? Oh, reminded of one that I saw today. I get recommended on these algorithms, you see. Someone who is unmasking their ADHD, filming themselves doing stuff like bursting into song or whatever. I can't remember how they worded it now. My mind's kind of blank. Just shooting. It was, I'm trying to think. Working hard to unmask, I think was the words. So it obviously doesn't come unnaturally. This person also said, it was a male, this one, saying he was gay, and then obviously there was some stuff to do with that, which is obviously working through. So he was like gay and sensitive, but it just wants to frame everything as being ADHD, and we've got to unmask it. We've got to unmask, which reminds me of the whole performative thing of a female influencer who makes money from it, saying, telling followers to hand flap to stim as a lost art. Oh, that's what I reminded of. I saw recently someone who I had seen before on another platform, which I left years ago, coming out recently as saying, I thought I was autistic, but I'm not, journalist or something. So I couldn't read the article, and I didn't want to subscribe to read the article, so sort of asked what the story was. Basically, it sounds like she thought she was. It sounded like at first it gave her some sense of, oh, you know, that fit. But then what she's observed is just the kind of toxic stuff in the neurodiversity community. And I actually, one of the reasons I don't call myself autistic anymore is because of that behaviour, mob bullying, the cult-like dynamics or whatever. But apparently she reckons she's, learnt some social skills, found that she is quite good at these sorts of things after all, and it doesn't fit her. So then, of course, there's some pushback about that, and the thing is that some of these people within this community were so mad at me that I my choice not to call myself autistic anymore, that they went to extreme lengths to punish me with the bullying and the lies and the fake book reviews and all sorts of things. I've actually taken my books off Amazon because I'm not really happy with Amazon. I only have them available as ebooks, but just if you do want to know more of the nuance of what I said and trying to also write a lot clearer than when I speak, I do have a book, Bipolar Courage, Are You Sure You're Not Autistic? And the second part was by what someone said to me, and when I said like because I wasn't identifying as autistic. So there's a bird outside. Hello, bird. So anyway, I gotta try and dry my hair. I've got wet hair, just washing my hair. Try and get my washing dry. I wasn't happy with the neighbour who sprayed his deck. Sprayed all this crap all over my washing. I was not happy. Anyway, I told him so. Instead of bottling it all up, I went out there and I said, "Oi," I said, "you've been spraying that deck for ages, for hours and hours, and the noise." And I don't know, it's just a tiny little deck. It decides to like, let's just get you very tiny. I said, "You sprayed my clean sheets." So anyway, he apologised and I sort of let him know, because hopefully next time he decides to spray his deck, he will think about checking if there's washing over the fence or not. Thanks.